So today we're going to leave short scale bass land for a little while and enter the wondrous world of medium scale basses. Today's video is a little bit unique in that I am going to be featuring two basses in this video, sort of doing a head-to-head comparison. A little disclaimer, the purpose of these videos is never to promote or advertise other brands or products. I always try to feature vintage or discontinued models, rarities, oddities, that sort of thing. This video is no different. However, the brand that we are going to be looking at today for both basses is Squier. Squier is a wonderful brand with a really cool history. They make some really cool products. However, both of these basses are not still currently being made, so this is not an advertisement for Squier at all. That said, I love these two basses that we're about to take a look at. So let's see what we have. First up is the Squier Vintage Modified Telecaster bass. They put these out a few years back. This one was made in 2013, made in Indonesia. I think they only made them for a year or two. There were two different versions. This is a true 32-inch scale bass. Very cool. Can't wait to tell you about it. I am even more excited about this bass. This is a very early made in Japan Squier bass, pretty hard to come by. It is also a true 32-inch scale, and as you can see, it is just a straight up P bass. We'll get into the history of this as well. But let's go back to the Telecaster bass and learn a little bit more about that first. So upon first glance, you might not realize that this is actually a medium scale bass because it is rather large. The Fender Telecaster bass headstock is really long. The bridge is sort of shifted out from the end of the body. There could have been some more room to pull all of this back. And much to the bass community's dismay, the Telecaster body just doesn't really work that well for bass. I think it would work better as a short scale. They tried really hard to make this work as a medium scale, but it still has some of its flaws. So this bass actually does balance pretty well. However, the body is really heavy, and I think that's a large part of it. When you're sitting down and playing, it's pretty comfortable, but similar to the Guild bass that we just took a look at, once this is on a strap, it's going to shift everything out to the left and make it a little bit more cumbersome. They kind of blew up the Telecaster body a little bit. This bass has a pretty large body, and it feels that way. It's a slab body, no contours here, with a really tight round over. They kept true to the vintage Telecaster with this bridge that just has two saddles, so there's not a lot of intonation there. We've got this Duncan design single coil P-bass pickup, which sounds pretty good. Where it gets a little funky is with the controls here. We've got a volume and a tone, and in the middle position, you've got just the pickup by itself, normal. Tone knob works, volume knob works. Sounds really cool, kind of like what you would expect out of a single coil P. In the forward position, there's a capacitor in the works, basically like rolling the tone knob off. Not really sure what the thought was there. I think they just had this three-way switch to work with and they needed to throw something in there. Then in the rear position, we've got tic-tac mode, which cuts out all the lows, leaves you with just this kind of trebly, nasally sound. I guess they were trying to harken back to the old days of country music and all that, where you could kind of plink along like you're playing on some old recording out of a gramophone. Kind of a novelty. Nonetheless, it's kind of interesting, adds a little bit of dimensionality to this bass. Now, I'm not much of a Fender Squier historian here, but I know that Fender started teaming up with Japan in the early 80s at the Fujigen factory. I believe it was Greco who came under a lot of pressure from Fender during the lawsuit era. They were making some really great copies, and eventually Fender just reached out and said, hey, why don't you guys just make Fenders for us? I believe some of the first guitars and basses came out of Japan in 1982. This is an A series, so the serial number indicates that this bass was made somewhere around 1985 to 1986. I'm not really sure whose idea it was to make a medium scale P bass. Fender was a little bit skeptical, and that's why they wanted to keep the Squier name on it. And I also know that they were very impressed with the result and later added the Fender name to it, I think within the same years that this bass was made, if not the next year after it. So essentially, this is a Fender. The Fender version of this bass is the same exact materials, electronics, hardware, everything. The only difference here is the Squier decal on the headstock, and it shows. The quality of this bass is really great. What you would expect from sort of like the heyday of the Japanese Fender and Squier era. This bass right away feels a lot better, a lot more comfortable than the Telecaster bass. Both of these basses are the exact same scale length. However, the Squier is a good 3 inches or so longer. You can see that the body is also much wider. All of these little design considerations do really add up when you're standing on a stage for hours at a time. We've got the arm cut, we've got a huge belly cut. Basswood body, so this is super lightweight. Riffs on maple neck with a really nice rosewood fingerboard. In the seated position, this bass actually does have a little bit of dive. Basswood's very lightweight. I think this whole bass comes in just under 8 pounds, which is pretty great. So when standing up with this thing on a strap, it's actually very comfortable to play. It plays just like you'd expect a P-bass to play, just a little bit easier and I think a little bit more fun. I don't have to say anything else about this. bass, you all know what a P bass is, but a medium scale P bass, pretty darn cool. I thought about comparing the 32-inch scale P bass to a normal P bass, and you all know what a P bass sounds like, and frankly, this doesn't really sound that different to my ears than a full-scale P bass. However, the split P versus the single coil P, that is quite a different ball game. I thought it would just be fun to compare the tones of the two. So let's do that. Before we get into comparing these two instruments, I just wanted to show you the tonal options on the Telecaster bass. So as you can hear, it is a single coil pickup, a little bit of that 60 cycle hum. Let's hear how the pickup sounds wide open. Here it is with the tone rolled off. And with that switch flipped to the forward position. Not a huge difference here. Not really sure what that's all about, but I guess it could be cool to just be able to flip between open and tone rolled off instead of having to work the knob. And here's tic-tac mode. I guess it's kind of cool if you like your bass to sound like it's coming out of an AM radio. Now let's compare the sound of the two instruments.